I know some of y'all are like keeping notes, trying to keep up with that. I'm not joking. Ben asked me on Monday this week. He said, "What cup are you going to use?" That was the most important question he had to ask me about this message. What cup are you going to use? And I want to make y'all a deal this morning. Spring break's all next week. So as y'all can see, people are excited. And as y'all can see, a lot of people have already started partying at the beach. So I'm going to make y'all a deal this morning. If y'all will talk to me, y'all got to talk to you. Let's practice one day. Y'all say, "Come on, Derek." Come on, Derek. Amen now. Amen. Bring it on. I don't even care what you say. As long as it's halfway understandable, you can just make noises. But I'll make you a deal. Y'all talk to me, and I'll preach to y'all like I'm preaching to 10,000 people. All right? Y'all got it? There you go. There you go. And I will tell you, I'm probably going to do it anyway because I don't know any other way except for just keeping it up here. All right, so a couple of weeks ago, we talked about restore. We want to be a part of God's healing in every life. Not only do we believe that God can restore any life, that He can mend any broken heart, that He can heal any relationship, we want to be a part of that process. As a church and individually, we want to be a part of people's story. We want to be a part of the life change that Jesus is doing. And last week we talked about celebrate. He won, we win, let's celebrate. We want to be the church that gets excited about the things that Jesus got excited about. We want to celebrate the things that God celebrates. When people come home, just like John said, 9 people made commitments to Jesus last week. That's a huge deal. We can clap for it again. I'll clap for it every week. That's a huge deal. We're going to be the church that celebrates when people come home. We're going to be that church. And we're in this series, Big Rocks. These are the important things. These are the stuff. This is who we are, what we're going to do. And this week we're talking about focus. Focus. Jesus is central to everything we do. All this stuff we're doing here on Sunday morning, all the stuff that you're doing in work, all the stuff that you're doing at home, if it's not centered on Jesus, if it's not focused on Him, it's not what it's supposed to be. And that's what we're going to be as a church. We're going to be focused on Jesus. And I'm going to start us off this morning. I'm going to ask y'all an uncomfortable question, and y'all are going to have to be openly honest because you can't lie in church. All right? So here's what I'm telling you. Some of y'all aren't going to like this question, but you got to be honest. How many of you have ever been on your phone, been looking at something, probably on Facebook, be my guess, checking some emails, sending a text? How many of you have been on your phone and you've been so into what's going on your phone that you ran slam into something or somebody? Blatant honesty now. With all the young people in the middle, that's what I'm saying. Y'all can't lie. It's church. I done told y'all. Y'all got to be honest. I know I've done it. And I put my hand up. What happens with me more often than not isn't running into stuff. It's stepping off of little ledges. I'll be texting somebody, and I'll just step off. And you got to look around and make sure nobody sees you. Because if they saw you, then you got to figure out some way to play it off, and that's not easy. But we do that. I know there's been several times I'm walking out of Walmart, and I walk 10 vehicles past my truck because I'm sending a text, and I'm like, I thought I parked right here, and I look, and I've done passed it 10 minutes ago. I get so into this thing. My kids, and maybe this is just my kids. Maybe this isn't your kids at all. My pants are driving me crazy back here. I'm trying to fix them. I think I got them now. Maybe it's just my kids. But when Devin and Tucker, when they're sitting in front of the TV, they go into another dimension. We'll be sitting there. They're supposed to be getting dressed. All their clothes are sitting on the couch. Tucker will have one sock on. Devin will have like his arm in the sleeve of his shirt. And they'll sit there, and I walk in, and they're just... And I'll say, Devin. I got to stand in front of the TV and do this before he'll ever pay me any attention. Because he goes into a completely different place. Some of the husbands in here, for sure, during football season, we go into another universe during the football games. And today's opening day of baseball. I don't know if anybody likes baseball, but today's opening day, we're going to be in another dimension again. And I'll tell y'all, this is what I got to watch. This is what I got to watch because I hate driving. I've been doing it for 15 years. I've had all I want. I don't want any more. So every chance I get, I'll beg Sarah. I'll drop down on my knees and beg Sarah to drive wherever we go because I don't want to drive. So what happens is I'll be in the passenger seat and I'll be on Facebook or I'll be playing some stupid game and I hear somebody talking. I'll hear something and all of a sudden I'll hear, okay? And for years now, when we were early married, this would happen. And I was young, man. I couldn't tell my wife, I wouldn't listen to a word you just said. Because I couldn't do that. And so I'd say, all right, yeah, whatever you think. I still don't know what I've agreed to. I got to watch out because she'll throw some crazy stuff in there. She'll be like, hey, Derek, you going to clean the whole house and let me sleep in every day this week? And if I'm not paying attention, I'll throw in that's whatever. So I got to be careful. We can get really focused on stuff. And I used our phone as a lot of example because that's where a lot of us get focused. But we can get so focused on stuff that pretty much everything else around us just kind of goes into the background. That everything else that's going on, my kids can be running around the house crazy, and I don't even hardly hear them because I'm so focused on something else. We get so focused. Today we're going to be looking at Matthew 14. In your bulletin is verse 28 through 33. But I'm going to tell you a little bit of the story before this. It starts around, I think it's verse 21, 22, somewhere around in there. So this was when Jesus fed 5,000 men. So most people think it was at least 12,000 people. But this was one of the big miracles. Jesus fed 5,000 men, probably about 12,000 people with a kid's meal. Multiplied some bread, multiplied some fishes, and fed all these people. Well, they got done, they cleaned up the scraps, and Jesus told the disciples, you guys go on ahead. Go on ahead. So the disciples got in the boat, and they took off in the boat out to the middle of the Sea of Galilee while Jesus went up on a mountain to pray. So the disciples are in the middle of a boat, in a boat in the middle of the night, in the middle of the Sea of Galilee, and Jesus comes down off the mountain. He needs to get to the disciples. And I'm not going to go into it too much because I went into it a little bit last week with this wall. I hope y'all remembered that. But I'm not going to go into it too much, but it says what the Bible says right there is what I love. It says, while they were a considerable distance, they were a considerable distance from land. Y'all know how I feel about this considerable distance. Because I told y'all there ain't no place you can go that Jesus can't get to you. No place you can go. So they're a considerable distance in the middle of the sea, in the middle of the night. So what does Jesus do? Y'all know the story. He just starts hiking on water. It's no big deal. Just go stroll on out there. I told y'all, Jesus can get to you. Ain't no such thing as too far from Jesus. So Jesus comes walking on the water. Think about this from the disciple standpoint. So you're in a boat in the middle of the night, and I'm going to be stepping in and out of this boat a few times. If I fall, I'm going to play it off, and I'm going to tell y'all I meant to do it. Just know that. Just know that. So they're in a boat in the middle of the night. So it's pitch dark, and they hear, I mean, you don't expect somebody to come walking up on you in the middle of the night. The disciples, they don't have flashlights back then, so it's not like they could just say, who is it? So they got to wait. They may have a lantern, but it's only going to show a few feet outside the boat. So they had to wait till whatever was coming towards them in the middle of the night was close enough for them to start making out a shadow. And so, I mean, I'm sure it scared them. I'm sure they were all pretty freaked out because it's a ghost. It's a ghost. But Jesus says, take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid. And this is where we're going to pick up with our text today. Verse 28. So Jesus says, take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. And so Peter says to Jesus, Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. Come, Jesus said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid. Beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and called him. You have little faith. Why did you doubt? And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down, and those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. I love this story. We're going to go back through it, and I'm going to point out a few things. We're just going to go back through that same passage, and it's in your bulletin if you want to look at it. So the first thing, when Jesus said, take courage, it is I, do not be afraid. The first thing Peter did was the first thing most of us would have done. I told you, it is in the middle of the night. They were scared. So what Peter said was, you're going to have to prove it. You're going to have to prove it. If it's you, Lord, if it's you, tell me to walk to you. Tell me to come to you. Peter was afraid. He wanted some proof. So it says, Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid. Beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. What I like to think, and I've been fishing a few times. It's been a while, as Jonathan pointed out to me several times, that I don't go fishing enough. But I've been on a lake, and yeah, every now and then you can have like some flash rains or some flash storms that just almost come out of nowhere, but they're not there in like a half a second. So what I think on this story, this wind that was going through here and this waves that were crashing, that was there before Peter stepped out of the boat. That stuff didn't just happen when he stepped out onto the water. He was standing on the boat, and there was wind and there was waves, but he was so focused on Jesus, his attention was so much on Jesus that he stepped out of the boat anyways. Y'all hear what I'm saying? I'm saying that the struggles that you have in your life, the problems that you have, the addiction that you have, the kids that you have, the marriage that you have, it's swarming, it's all around you, and it can feel so overwhelming. There you go. But when you focus on Jesus, when you put your focus on Jesus, it's not near as scary. It's not near as scary. Now, and don't hear something I'm not saying, because it's just as real. Those were real waves. That was real wind that Peter was experiencing. But because he was so focused on Jesus, it wasn't as scary, and he still stepped out of the boat. So Peter starts sinking. Peter starts sinking, and he cries out, "Lord, save me." And I love this part of this story. Probably my favorite part of this whole thing. And this is what I talked about last week too, so it'll preach, but I'm not going to preach it today. Peter cried out, "Lord, save me." 3 words. Peter realized that he was sinking. He realized that he was getting in over his head. He realized that he couldn't walk on that water by himself. And he said, "Lord, save me." And what happened? What does it say? Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him and said, "You have little faith. Why did you doubt?" But it was immediately. Jesus didn't say, "No, Peter, you got yourself in. You stepped out of the boat." He didn't say, "No, Peter, if you'll get your life right, I'm going to grab a hold of you and I'm going to pull you out." He didn't say, "Hey, Peter, you do your part and then I'll do my part." Immediately, all Peter said was, "Lord, save me." And Jesus immediately grabbed him. And he said, "You have little faith. Why did you doubt?" I want to take this time to clarify a couple things about Peter, because he gets a bad rap on some of this stuff. 2 chapters later in Matthew, Jesus is talking to the disciples, and he says, who do people say I am? And the disciples said, "Oh, some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, some Jeremiah or one of the other prophets." Jesus said, "But who do you say I am?" And Peter, without giving anybody else a chance to say a word, piped up and said, "You're the Messiah, the Son of the Most High God." Peter said, "You are the Son of God. You are the one that came to save all of us." So Peter's faith was in Jesus. I don't have any question about that. Peter's faith was in Jesus, but he took his focus off of Jesus. We got to focus, and you can put this in your notes, you got to focus on what you put your faith in. You got to focus on what you put your faith in. All the stuff going on around us, we can have all the faith in the world. We can believe all the stuff in the world, but we can still get distracted by the things that are going on. That's why we got to have that focus. The second thing about Peter is that I told y'all he gets a really bad rap here. I've heard preaching after message after message of people saying, "Well, Peter just didn't have enough faith. He didn't trust in Jesus." I've heard that so many times, and every single time I've heard that, I think, yeah, that's coming from the people who are standing in the boat. It's real easy to stand here and say, "Look at Peter, you don't believe Jesus enough. You don't even trust him." But the way I see it, he's the only person that stepped his tail out of the boat. I just wanted to clear that up. Nobody else had the guts to try that. Peter was the one that stepped out of the boat. Verse 32, when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." I got to point this out because this is why we exist. This is why we exist as a church. This is why you and I exist as people. This is why we're here on the earth. Because Peter had the boldness. and he had the faith in Jesus, and he focused on Jesus and took that step out of the boat. Yeah, he started sinking. He lost focus and he started sinking, but because he had the boldness and the audacity to trust God enough to step out of that boat in the first place, everybody in that boat started worshiping Jesus. That's why we're here. That's why we're doing it. And look, Jesus was walking on the water either way. I told y'all the disciples were in the middle of the ocean. I mean, they were in the middle of the sea. Jesus goes walking out there. He was already on the water by the time Peter said anything. When Peter said, Lord, if it's you, tell me to come. Jesus could have said, no, I'm almost there. I'm fixing to hop in the boat anyway. Don't worry about it. But that's not what he said. Because he says the same thing to Peter that he says to us. He says, yeah, if you want to be a part of what I'm doing, if you want me to show my power through you, if you want to be a part of the impact that I'm having, if you want to be a part of the life change that I'm about to make happen here, come on. Step on out of that boat. So just like Peter did, we have a decision to make. Are we going to watch? Are we going to watch from the boat? Are we going to say, "Good way to go, Jesus"? I mean, did you see what he just did? I mean, is that what we're going to do? Because what it makes me think about, I'm telling you, I'm going to trip over that thing. What it makes me think about are these Facebook videos, and I watch them too, so I ain't judging anybody. I see these Facebook videos, these YouTube videos of these little kids who somebody, like the little poor little kids, somebody buys them a birthday cake. And man, those things are moving. It's a birthday cake, but I'm like trying to fight back tears. I'm like, this is a little birthday cake. Or we see the one where the guy bought the family a washer and dryer. Or the one, there's one where there's some homeless people, and somebody bought cheeseburgers and took them to homeless people. And these homeless guys look like they're starving to death. They start chopping up these cheeseburgers and handing them out to their friends. Man, I watch these things, and I'm telling you, it's hard to watch them. If you got a heart, it's hard to watch them and not tear up a little bit. It stirs something inside of you. But what it makes me think is, are we watching them from here? Because when we watch those videos, they're good. Praise God for those videos. But why worship from the boat when we can walk on the water? That right there was probably the best thing I've ever said on this stage. Best thing I've ever said. Somebody better tweet it or I better see it on Facebook today. Why worship from the boat when we can be out walking on the water? That's right. There you go. There you go. We need to be the people buying those cheeseburgers. We need to be some of us can be the people buying that washer and dryer. We can afford it. We need to be the people buying the birthday cakes. We need to be the ones spending time with our coworkers when they're going through hard times. We need to be the ones that stick it out with our kids when they start going through that phase. Some of those phases. I went through about 50 of them. We need to be the ones sticking out. We need to be the ones fighting for our marriage. We need to be the ones giving generously. We need to be the ones out of the boat and walking on the water. And we can do that when we focus on what we put our faith in. But so many of us, probably all of us at some point or another, and a lot of us even right now, we feel like we got nothing to offer. We feel like, oh, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. Or I'm just a salesman. I'm just a waitress. I'm just a waiter. God can't use me. I don't really have anything to offer. And we use that stuff as reasons to stay in the boat. And I'm going to be honest with y'all, this story in Matthew 14, I struggled with it for years. I struggled with it for years because I would read this story, and I would see Peter, and I would read where Jesus said, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" And I would look at Peter, who right after this said, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the Most High God." And I'm thinking, well, he sure believed it. He didn't even see Jesus come back from the dead, and he was saying, "You're the Son of God. You came to save us." I mean, he had some faith in Jesus. And I would look at the story when they're out on the boat, and I would see that Peter stepped out of the boat. I mean, you think about how much faith it takes for you to see something that you think is a ghost walking across the water, say, "Come on out here." And you have enough faith to step out of the boat knowing that water can't hold you up. Knowing that you can't hold you up. Trusting that Jesus is going to hold you up. That's a lot of faith. And I would look at this story where Jesus said, you have little faith, why did you doubt? And I would think, man, if that's a little faith, then I got no faith. Because that's faith if I've ever seen it. But let me ask you this. Is it possible that when Peter steps out of that boat to walk to Jesus, I told you he was focused. That's what we got to do. He was focused on Jesus. But when he stepped out of that boat, is it possible as he started losing focus, he was thinking, I'm just a fisherman. I cuss way too much. I go out and I have some drinks with my friends and we get rowdy. I got a short fuse. I lose my temper just like that. I'll cut somebody's ear off. You don't believe me? Read further in the story. Is it possible that Peter's saying that he's thinking, God, Jesus, you can't use me? Is it possible that Peter didn't doubt Jesus, but that Peter doubted the fact that Jesus could use him? Because the more I've thought about that, I think it's the same thing that we do. We're standing in the boat saying, I'm not good enough. I can't measure up. I checked out a girl at the gym last week. I yelled at my kids on the way to church this morning. I haven't had a conversation with my wife in 3 days because I don't like her anymore. And so we use all these reasons to not step out of the boat. It's the same thing. But the problem with that is when we look at ourselves and we say, I'm not good enough, it's in direct opposition of when Jesus is saying, I made you good enough. Because he put a whole lot of stock. Jesus put a whole lot of stock in us being a part of his story. In us being a part of the work he was doing. In us getting to participate. And he didn't have to, but he wanted to. He put a lot of stock in us being a part of the life change in the people around us. In us being the ones that step out of the boat so that everybody else in the boat will worship Jesus. Because they see that he's making somebody like me walk on water. He put a lot of stock in us. Jesus was focused on spreading his message to us. He was focused on pouring himself out on us, to us, for us. And what we didn't talk about is right before this, the beginning of chapter 14. What happened was John the Baptist, which is Jesus' cousin, John the Baptist was beheaded because of a vendetta that the queen had against him. She didn't like him, so she had his head cut off. And Jesus found out about this. They came to Jesus and said, hey, John's dead. And he found out, in Matthew 14, it says that he went to withdraw to a secluded place. He went to go be by himself. We can understand that. He needed some time. His cousin, this is the John the Baptist that spent his whole life preparing people for Jesus. He spent his whole life going out and yelling to people, you got to get ready. Jesus is coming. That's where that song came from. People get ready. Jesus is coming. Like 2 of you know that song. That was horrible. He's the one that went and told everybody, hey, Jesus, he's coming. He's going to save us all. This is the guy that baptized Jesus. And yeah, Jesus knew he was going to see him again, but that didn't make it hurt any less. So Jesus went to go to a secluded place. But what happened is when he landed in this secluded place, apparently word got out. Word got out that Jesus was heading there. And when he came, I told you it was 5,000 men, 12,000 people. He went to go to a secluded place and was met with 12,000 people. Doesn't feel very secluded, right? And we could have read this story. And it could have said, Jesus showed up and he said, no, guys, I got to have some time. I need some time. My cousin, John is like, his body's still warm. I need some time to myself. I can't do this right now. But that's not at all what happened. Look, let's face it. He's Jesus. He could have just disappeared. But when he showed up and he saw 12,000 people, it said he was moved with compassion and he healed their sick. He saw all these people in the middle of his hurt, in the middle of what he was going through, in the middle of this trial that he was facing. He saw all these people and invested in them anyways. He was so focused on God that even his horrible situation of his cousin dying, the one that he loved, the one that baptized him, his cousin dying, he was able to move past that and heal all their sick. He was so focused on God that even in the middle of that, he was still sharing the love of God with these other people. You could say, you could even word it like this: he was extending the love of God. And if you're crazy like me, and you're sold out to this, and you're so bought into it that you live and breathe it almost, you could say that if we'll be the church that doesn't make excuses to why we need to stay in the boat, if we'll be the church that gets so focused on Jesus that we step out anyway, even when it doesn't make sense, because water can't hold you up. If we'll be that church, we'll be the people that extend God's love. And I know that sounds familiar because we preached about it 3 weeks ago. Being the people that extend God's love. That's our vision. That's what we're going to do. And this is what it takes. It takes us focusing on Jesus and stepping out of the boat, even when it doesn't make sense. Even when we feel like our marriage is completely shot. Even when we feel like our kids aren't coming back. Even when we feel like our boss is the biggest jerk we have ever met. We got to be so focused on Jesus that we step out of the boat anyway. When Jesus tells you to step out of the boat, you don't have to worry about if you're good enough. You don't have to worry about if the water's going to hold you up, because he's going to hold you up. That's what he promises you. Can you come on up and start playing? We're fixing the transition here. That's what he promises us. That if you'll listen to him, if you'll focus on him and hear him when he says step out of the boat, no matter how bad it looks, no matter how big the wind is, no matter how big those waves are crashing, when Jesus says come, you step out of that boat and you walk on water. We got to focus on what we put our faith in. We got to be so intent on what Jesus wants for us, on the better life that he has for us. We got to be so focused on being the generous people that he says we are, that we take bold steps. Because what happens when we take bold steps, people see, they look at Derek Harper and they say, he can't do that. He's not capable of that. I've talked to that guy before, and he'll blow up on somebody. But when they see me handle situations, and I'm doing everything I can to handle them like Jesus does, they were like, man, this guy, I'm surprised he's not punching somebody right now. That's what we want, because when they see that in you, when they see that in me, when they see us taking these bold steps, doing things that don't make sense, they'll start worshiping from the boat. And when they start worshiping from the boat, you know what their next step is? Coming out on the water with us. That's what Jesus told us to do. Go make disciples who make disciples. And I'm going to tell you, you can't be a disciple of Jesus if you're sitting in the boat. Well, you can be a disciple of Jesus if you're sitting in the boat, but you can't live that full life he's talking about. Because Peter had the boldness to step out of that boat, he experienced something. Ushers, can y'all go ahead and start preparing for communion? When Peter stepped out of that boat, he got to experience something that nobody else got to experience. He got to walk on water. How many of y'all want to walk on water? How many of y'all got some stuff going on? You got some stuff going on right now that you know this could be your chance, where Jesus is saying, you come right now. You come on right now, and you can step out of that boat, and you can take your life to the next level. You can take your walk to the next level, and you can send everybody else in that boat worshiping. And just like we said last week, we're going to be the ones cheering with you, but we're not going to be the church cheering from the boat. How many of y'all know that? We're not going to be the church cheering from the boat. We're going to be the church cheering from the water, because I want to walk on water. Y'all want to walk on water? All right, Pastor Martin.